You were never supposed to know this. Not because it's classified, not because it's hidden in some locked government archive, but because the truth is far more disturbing than that. The truth is sitting quietly in millions of pockets right now. Small, silent, invisible. A coin-sized device designed to help people find their lost keys or their missing luggage. But what happens when someone decides to use it to find you? In late November of 2024, the holiday lights were already glowing inside a mall in Buffalo, New York. Christmas decorations hung from the ceiling. Artificial snow glittered under fluorescent lights. Music about joy and family echoed through the corridors. It felt safe, warm, normal. For a few seconds, she just sat there in the driver's seat, staring at the notification like it was written in another language. Airtag found moving with you. Most people would have ignored it. A random alert, a tech glitch, something small and meaningless in a world full of notifications. But something about the wording made her stomach tighten. Moving with you. That meant the device wasn't just nearby. It had been following her route, from the mall all the way to her neighborhood. Her first instinct was denial. Maybe another car nearby had one. Maybe a neighbor driving home at the same time had an AirTag attached to their keys. Her brain was searching desperately for a normal explanation. But the phone didn't stop vibrating. The alert expanded into a map, and the moment she saw it, the quiet street suddenly didn't feel so quiet anymore. A thin red line traced the exact path she had taken that night. The mall parking lot, the main road, the turn toward her neighborhood, the slow loop around the cul-de-sac. Every movement she had made was marked like breadcrumbs, except these breadcrumbs weren't hers. They belonged to the AirTag, and that meant only one thing. It was somewhere inside her car. Her heart began pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Without thinking, she took her foot off the brake and drove past her own driveway. She wasn't about to park yet, not until she knew exactly what was happening. The car rolled slowly around the cul-de-sac again, headlights sweeping across the quiet houses. Every shadow suddenly looked suspicious. Every parked car felt like it might contain someone watching. Her phone screen showed instructions. Play sound. If the AirTag was nearby, it would start beeping. She hesitated for only a second before tapping the button. At first, there was nothing, just the soft hum of the engine, the faint ticking of the car cooling in the winter air. Then, a tiny sound, barely audible. Beep! Her entire body went cold. The sound wasn't coming from outside the car. It was coming from inside. Another beep echoed through the cabin, now louder, closer. Her shaking hands began tearing through the shopping bags sitting in the passenger seat. Clothes from Zara, makeup from Sephora, tissue paper, receipts. Then, suddenly, her fingers touched something small, hard, round. She pulled it out, and there it was, a small white disc no bigger than a coin, an Apple AirTag. Someone had dropped it into one of her shopping bags. Someone wanted to know exactly where she went after leaving the mall. And as she stared at the tiny tracker in her hand, one thought slowly crawled into her mind. The only person who had been close enough to do that, the only stranger who had sat beside her, the man from the bench.
The moment she realized what she was holding, her stomach twisted so violently she thought she might throw up. That tiny white disc sitting in her hand suddenly felt like something alive, watching, listening, reporting everywhere she went. Her breathing became shallow as panic began spreading through her chest. The quiet cul-de-sac around her suddenly felt too open, too exposed, like she had just stepped into the center of a stage without realizing someone had been watching the entire performance. Because that's what the Airtag meant. Someone knew where she was. Not just the mall, not just the road home, her house. And whoever had placed it there was probably watching the map right now, seeing the exact moment she stopped driving, seeing the exact house where the signal ended. Her first instinct was to get rid of it immediately. She rolled down the car window and without thinking twice hurled the Airtag as far as she could into the darkness beyond the road. The tiny device disappeared somewhere into the shadows near the trees. Gone. But the relief didn't come, because even as the tracker vanished into the night, a much worse realization followed it. The person who planted it had already seen the destination. The damage was already done. She slammed the car into drive and sped the last few feet toward her driveway. The headlights bounced wildly across the garage door as she pulled in. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely turn the steering wheel. All she wanted was to get inside the house, inside something solid, inside somewhere locked. She jumped out of the car and ran to the garage keypad, punching in the code as quickly as her trembling fingers allowed. The door began rising with a loud mechanical rumble, but the moment the opening was high enough to see inside, her heart sank. Her mother's car was parked in the garage. There wasn't enough space for hers, which meant she had no choice. She had to leave her car outside, exposed. The thought made her skin crawl. She backed away from the garage and sprinted to the front door instead, fumbling with her keys before finally getting the lock open. The second she stepped inside, she slammed the door shut behind her and locked it, then the deadbolt, then the chain. Her chest was heaving. The silence inside the house felt suffocating. Her brother wasn't home. Her parents were gone, and for the first time since that notification appeared, the reality fully settled in. Someone had tracked her here. Someone now knew exactly where she lived, and somewhere out there in the darkness beyond those walls, the person who planted that Airtag might already be nearby. For a moment, she just stood there in the entryway, staring at the door like it might suddenly move. The house felt different now. The same living room, the same furniture, the same quiet suburban silence, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a place someone else had already seen on a map. Her hands were still shaking as she pulled out her phone and called the one person she knew would answer, her brother. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Music and voices echoed faintly in the background when he answered, the noise of a crowded bar bleeding through the speaker. "Hey, what's up?" She tried to speak normally, but her voice came out tight. "I think someone followed me home." The music on the other end suddenly became quieter, like he had stepped outside. "What do you mean?" She explained everything in a rush. The mall, the conversation with the old man, the notification, the Airtag in her shopping bag, the fact that she had just thrown it out of the car window down the street. For a few seconds after she finished talking, there was silence. Then her brother said something that made the situation even more real. "If someone comes to the house, call me immediately." He didn't laugh. He didn't tell her she was overreacting. His tone was serious, too serious. That alone made her heart start racing again. He told her he'd head home soon, just in case. The bars near the university were only 10 minutes away. 10 minutes. That number stuck in her head. 10 minutes suddenly felt like an eternity. After the call ended, she walked slowly into the living room and turned on the television just to fill the house with noise. The silence was too heavy otherwise. Outside the windows, the cul-de-sac remained still and dark. No cars passed. No neighbors walked by. Everything looked completely normal. And yet every few seconds her eyes drifted back toward the front door, waiting, listening. Her mind kept replaying the same question. Did the man already know where the tracker was? Did he realize she had thrown it away? Or worse, had he been close enough to see her do it? She tried to push the thought away and focus on the television. Minutes passed. 5, maybe 6. Then suddenly, ding-dong! The doorbell rang. The sound cut through the house like a blade. Her stomach dropped instantly. Before she could even process it, 3 loud knocks followed. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Every instinct in her body screamed the same thing. The person at the door already knew she was inside. The sound of the knocking echoed through the house long after it stopped. For a few seconds she couldn't move. Her body felt locked in place, like her brain and muscles had suddenly disconnected. The television was still playing behind her, voices from some random show filling the room, but none of it felt real anymore. All she could hear was the silence on the other side of the door. Someone was standing there, waiting. Her mind tried to convince her it could be anyone. A neighbor, a delivery driver, someone knocking on the wrong house. But deep down she already knew that wasn't true. Slowly, carefully, she stepped toward the door. Each footstep felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was resisting her movement. The front door had a textured glass panel beside it, the kind that blurred shapes but still allowed light and shadows to pass through. From a distance, she could see the vague outline of a person standing outside. A tall shape, still, patient. Her heartbeat was pounding so loudly she was afraid the person outside might hear it. She leaned forward slightly, trying to make out more details through the distorted glass. And then a voice came from the other side. Calm, almost casual. "Hey, Ashley." Her entire body froze. He knew her name. "I think you might have my Airtag." The moment he said it, the pieces snapped together in her mind like a puzzle she never wanted to solve. The mall, the bench, the photo of the girl on his phone, the casual conversation, the way he had been sitting close enough to reach her bags. He hadn't dropped the Airtag by accident. He had placed it there on purpose. And now he was standing outside her house, pretending like it had all been a misunderstanding. Through the glass, she could see his shape move slightly, leaning closer to the door. "I must have dropped it in your bag by mistake," he said. "If you could just give it back, I'd really appreciate it." His voice sounded polite, friendly, but there was something wrong underneath it, something that made her skin crawl. Because the biggest problem with his story was obvious. If the AirTag had been dropped into her bag accidentally, how did he know which house she had entered? How did he know she was inside? And worst of all, how did he know her name? Her breath caught in her throat as another horrifying thought formed. The man hadn't just tracked her home, he had been watching the entire time.
For a moment, she considered answering him. Just opening the door a crack, handing him the AirTag, ending the situation quickly before it escalated into something worse. But then reality caught up with that thought. The AirTag wasn't in the house anymore. She had thrown it down the street. And even if she hadn't, opening the door for a stranger who had secretly tracked her home would have been the worst decision she could make. So she stayed silent. On the other side of the door, the man waited. Seconds stretched painfully long. Then he spoke again. "You don't have to worry," he said, his voice still calm. "It was just an accident." She didn't respond. Her eyes stayed locked on the blurred outline of his body through the glass. A few more seconds passed. Then his tone changed slightly. Not aggressive, not angry, just more direct. "I know you're in there." The words made her stomach drop. Her instinct told her to move away from the door, but she couldn't stop herself from glancing through the glass one more time. And in that moment, the man shifted slightly, just enough for the porch light to illuminate his face. It was him. The same thin frame, the same gray hair, the same friendly smile she had seen at the mall. Except now, it didn't look friendly at all. It looked rehearsed, like a mask. The moment he noticed movement behind the glass, his smile widened slightly. "See," he said softly, "I told you I knew you were there." Her entire body went cold. He had seen her. The moment stretched longer. Neither of them moved. Then suddenly he said something that made the situation even worse. "Even if you threw the AirTag away, I already know where you live." Her breath caught. So he had seen her throw it. That meant he must have been nearby when she arrived, watching from somewhere in the darkness of the cul-de-sac, watching her panic, watching her run inside. And now he was standing at the door like this was some kind of casual misunderstanding. Her brain finally screamed the command her body needed to hear. "Move." She stepped away from the door quickly and backed into the living room, putting distance between herself and the entrance. Behind her, the house felt enormous and empty. Too many windows, too many blind spots, too many places someone could appear if they decided to try something worse. A few seconds passed in silence. Then another knock echoed through the house. Slower this time, deliberate. Knock, and then his voice again. Lower now, colder. "You shouldn't pretend you don't know I'm watching you." The words sent a chill through her spine, because the front door wasn't the only place someone could watch from. And suddenly, she realized there were windows everywhere. When the man said, "You shouldn't pretend you don't know I'm watching you," something inside her snapped. Her mind suddenly raced through the layout of the house. The door wasn't the only way someone could see inside. There were windows everywhere. The living room, the dining room, the large glass window facing the front lawn. Slowly, almost against her own will, she turned her head toward the living room window. At first, there was nothing, just darkness outside, the faint outline of trees, the quiet lawn lit by the porch light. Then something moved, a shape shifted in the darkness. Her heart slammed violently against her ribs. The man was standing there, right outside the glass, his face pressed so close to the window that his breath fogged the surface, and he was smiling. Not the friendly smile he had worn in the mall. This one looked different, controlled, enjoying the moment. He slowly lifted one finger and tapped the glass. Tap, tap, tap. "I told you," he said through the window, his voice muffled by the glass. "I love it when people pretend they don't know I'm watching." Her body finally reacted. She grabbed her phone and called her brother again, nearly shouting into the speaker. "He's here! He's outside the window!" Her brother's voice was sharp now. "I'm almost home. Call 911 right now." She hung up and immediately dialed emergency services. While the phone rang, the man didn't move. He just stood there, watching, smiling, like this entire situation was entertainment for him. She couldn't take it anymore. She left the living room and ran deeper into the house, into a small office with no windows. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely speak when the dispatcher answered. Minutes passed like hours. Then finally, headlights swept across the driveway. Her brother's car. He ran into the house moments later, but when they both looked back toward the window, the man was gone, completely gone. Police arrived shortly after. They searched the property. No footprints, no car, no witnesses, nothing. Just one single terrifying truth. Someone had used a tiny tracker to follow her home, and somewhere out there, that man now knew exactly where she lived.
You need to understand something about technology. It doesn't create evil, but it gives evil new tools. Years ago, stalking someone required time, patience, and risk. A person had to physically follow their target. They had to stay hidden. One mistake could expose them. Today, a device the size of a coin can do all of that silently, and the person being watched might not even realize it. That's exactly what happened to Claire. Claire had just moved to a new city for a job promotion. Nothing dramatic, just another mid-sized American city where people worked, commuted, and lived ordinary lives. Her commute home from work took about 15 minutes. Same route every day, same streets, same routine. One Tuesday evening, she was driving home while listening to a podcast when her phone buzzed with a notification she had never seen before. Airtag found, moving with you. At first, she barely reacted. She assumed it was a mistake. Maybe someone in the parking lot had dropped their keys. Maybe a coworker nearby had an AirTag attached to something. But when she opened the alert, the information on the screen made her stomach drop. The device had been moving with her for over an hour. That meant the AirTag had already been traveling with her long before she even started the drive home, which meant it had been in her car or on her car the entire time she was at work. Someone had planted it there. Someone had been watching where she went. And now, whoever owned that AirTag was about to learn exactly where she lived.